I've been a full-time investor for just about 20 years now. And before that, I spent about
Woo!
15 years.
Because I've been loved so much. I faced a lot of challenges and obstacles to get to where I am today, and the people around me have helped get me to where I am today.
What is up, y'all? We got Scorch the Fears, episode 79, with my guys, Richard Knowles and Mitch Roye. I was telling Richard right before this, I did not know you guys were business partners. Fun fact. I know both of you. I know both of you because you're both huge in Subto, but I had no idea you guys were business partners. So I was like, oh man, I get like 2 for 1 on this Scorch the Fears, right? Like, this is great. This is going to be amazing, right? So thank you guys for being here so much. I appreciate both of you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. We appreciate it. I've watched your podcast so many times, and I'm super grateful and blessed that you invited us on this podcast. So I'm very happy to be here, man.
I mean, you guys deserve it. I mean, you guys are both huge Subto leaders. By the way, guys, if you're watching this on Instagram, come to YouTube. You're going to actually be able to hear the other people on the podcast, Richard Knowles and Mitch Roye. They're both have a lot to drop. So come on to YouTube if you're watching it on Instagram. So how am I going to start it off? I'm going to start off with you, Mitch, because I know you a little bit less than Richard. I feel like I've met Richard quite a few times in person, but I don't know if I've ever met you in person. I'm not sure if I ever have. So I want to know, I'm going to start with my classic. How did you get into entrepreneurship, and what were the fears that you had right when you were starting, and how did you overcome them? We'll start. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, excuse me. I'm being silly. Explain your guys' business first. Explain what you guys do. We're going to just start there, and then I'm going to get into your guys' story.
Go ahead, Rich.
Oh, you want me to go? Oh, yeah. So basically, Mitch and I have been working together since 2021. So we've been in Subto since May of 2020. We have been one of the first 100 people to join Subto, pretty much in inception. Ooh. So amazing. I mean, we were on Zoom calls with Pace, almost 24/7 practically. And so what we've been doing is a lot of wholesaling, a lot of creative finance, underwriting different deals. So we've done some multifamily deals, real estate careers. We've done wholesaling, of course. We still wholesale today. And we assign a lot of creative finance deals, wraps. We both have experience with Airbnb. Mitch has experience with development. So together we have experienced a lot of different things, from private money lending to ground up development to wholesaling to Airbnbs to wraps, all different kinds of creative finance. So that's pretty much what we do. We do anything pretty much in creative finance realm. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, that's what you do.
100%. It 100% does. And honestly, I'm just going to ask, I'm not going to start off the way I normally do. I want to know, how did you guys partner up? How did that happen? Because I knew both of you. You guys are both OGs. There are very few people who've been in Subto longer than me. I was like the second wave, I would say. I was like when there was like 1,000 people in Subto, right? Like I was like July or August of 2020. But nonetheless, I want to know, like, how did you two decide to partner up, and like why did you guys do that? I'm gonna ask that of Mitch. Like, how did you guys partner up? What's the story behind that? How did that happen?
Richard started flirting with me on a Zoom call, and that's how we got started. And Rich tells this story better. I think he saw me on a Zoom call, building rapport and talking to sellers. That's one of my skill sets, is building rapport. And he said, I got to meet this guy. And he called me up and said, hey, I've got this appointment in San Diego with a big time seller. Would you come join me? And I'm going to let Rich finish the story from there.
Yes. So basically we had I think it was a 2-acre property. It was actually a nursery. So the owner was selling plants, and it was like a multi-million-dollar property. And I was talking to the seller and trying to structure something creative. And because the property was in San Diego and Mitch's house is on the way to the property, he lives maybe about 30 minutes from the property. So I said, hey, Mitch, why don't you just join me on an appointment? We never met yet. We hadn't met yet, right? So we both have been Subto leaders in the community. So we met on Zoom and had many Zooms together, but never met face to face. So I said, hey, Mitch, come meet me on this appointment face to face so you can meet, but also talk to the seller and try to close him. So this is my seller, right? So we get to the appointment. Mitch and I meet each other. We, give each other hugs. We, embrace each other, right? And then we walk up to the seller, and I'm preparing for what I'm about to say to the seller. I have my script ready to go, my underwriting, and Mitch basically just killed that appointment. He took over the appointment for me without like any. I don't know, man. It was like a bromance thing going on. It was crazy. Like I'm sitting right between these two guys. I'm sitting in the middle. Mitch is to my left, and the seller is to my right, and they're literally just talking nonstop. And it's like I'm not even there. It's my appointment. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, what is going on right now? And Mitch is killing an appointment. Like the seller is like loving what he's saying. Like he's embracing him and hugging him, all that kind of stuff, having him laughing. It was crazy. So I'm like, what is going on here? I need to stop what I'm doing right now and hire this guy, hire Mitch on my team ASAP. So that's basically what happened. So we basically decided, his strength is my weakness. I'm very strong in technology. I have a software engineering background, which is one of his weaknesses. So we complement each other. So we decided, okay, let's partner up. We're both leaders of Sub 2 anyway. So let's partner up. So we've been partners since, I think, January of 2021. Yeah.
I love it so much. So then, okay, then that was what I was going to ask. Because I was curious, like, what about you guys? Like, why? Because you got to be really sure that, like, partnerships aren't just, like, you got to make sure that it's not just, like, your friend. Just because you like them, you don't just partner up. There has to actually be synergy there. So you got into it a little bit there, Richard, but what is your guys' synergy? What's your weaknesses and strengths, Richard, and what's your strengths and weaknesses, Mitch? And why do those work so well together?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not, back then, I'm better now, but back then I was not good on the phone. I'm not good at report building. I was not good at, closing sellers back then. And based on what I saw from Mitch, he was the best coach I've ever seen. He's the master report builder. He's amazing. Like I was sitting with him at a restaurant, we went to IHOP, and he's complimenting the waitress and making her laugh and all these different things. I'm like, this guy is phenomenal when it comes to report building. And I'm like, I gotta have this guy on my team. So his strength is, coding and report building. And that was pretty much my weakness back then. I'm much better at coding now, but that was my weakness. And my strength, coming from a software engineering background, I went to college and grad school for engineering, and I'm very tech savvy. I'm good with systems and processes, and I love just creating software, coding, and that's my thing. I'm more of an integrator. Mitch is more of a visionary, and of course, everybody from Rocket Fuel, I'm sure visionary versus integrator, they go very well together, right? So we figured out that I'm a great integrator and he's a great visionary. So we decided to partner up together.
So then, Mitch, like, what are your guys' roles in the company? Because like visionary, integrator, they're very like, how do I say it? Amorphous terms. They're like not very clear a lot of times unless you've read the book Rocket Fuel. So like, what specifically does a visionary do in a wholesaling/creative financing company? And what does a integrator do? What are you guys doing all day? And I'm going to let Mitch answer this one.
I want to add on to what Rich said before I get into that. One of the things that initially attracted us is, and I think we both agree on this, is we both share the same moral compass. And in business, particularly real estate, which it could be a pretty cutthroat business, sharing the same moral compass and knowing that the other guy has your back and I don't ever have to think about that. That is huge. Very, very important. The other thing, and we kind of joke about this, we call each other a brother from another mother. We seem to see the world and business and real estate things in the same way. I mean, he's writing something and I'm like, I literally thought the same thing. We just did this 2 days ago. We were underwriting a deal and he's coming up with something and I literally sent an email almost identical. So those things build us together and strengthen us. The other thing is we happen to have complementary skills. Rich is phenomenal at technology and analysis. And I'm more, he used the term visionary, which I'll lead that into what that means in our world. My background, we can get into this a little bit later, is in marketing. And so my focus is building the brand, building the business, building our rapport with people, building our credibility and our trust, getting our name out there, and doing a great job. And that starts with the mindset. And this is what we do in our accountability group. We believe in giving first before we ever ask. Give more value than you ever get. It will always come back to you. So in our world, he's more focused on the computers and the systems. I'm more focused on building the relationships, underwriting deals, building the brand. And that's how it really works together.
I love it. I love it so much. So I'm getting really off track of how I usually do this, but I just the questions are coming to me. So I want to know the answers. So I want to know this because this is something I've thought about, and you guys are OG leaders of Subto, the community, right? And I want to know from your guys' perspective, how does one become a leader in a community? Like, I think this is such an interesting question because I've been thinking about this recently. Like, I think it's showing up for the community or showing up for any community. And if you're going to create your own community, showing up for it, that's what makes you a leader. But I also want your guys' opinion of how did you guys become leaders in Subto, and what does it even mean to be a leader in the Subto community or any community that you guys are a part of? And I'll do that to Richard first.
Yeah, being a leader is a great responsibility. As Pace always says, a great leader creates leaders in others. So that's something that we took to heart. Mitch and I are true go-givers. It's part of our personalities, and we just love helping people. That's what's fulfilling for me. A lot of people don't know this already, but if you know me personally, you know that I'm hearing impaired. I actually have a hearing disability, and I wouldn't be where I'm at if people didn't help me get to where I am. And that kind of made me who I am today. Like, my mom quit her job, for 6 years to take care of me. She put me in therapy so I can speak properly. I was in right schools. I went to mainstream schools, but I still had tutors and all that kind of stuff. And just the people around me, they've been very, very caring and been helping me get to where I need to be. And because I've been loved so much, I face a lot of challenges and obstacles to get to where I am today, and the people around me have helped get me to where I am today. And I just want to give back to everyone around me. I just want to have that positive impact on people the same way they had that positive impact on me. So that's kind of where my leadership comes from, just creating a positive impact for others and helping other people. And that's just part of my personality, and I just love helping people, man. And I would say loyalty and being trustworthy and helping others would be the true qualities of a leader.
I love it. How about for you, Mitch?
I love that answer. I think it's a great answer, and that's one of the things that we also have in common. We truly enjoy helping and empowering others and watching them grow and learn. It's very important to us. It's something we do every day in our group. We're always asking people, how can we be of help? And that's why each of us, we get 30 calls a day from people. Can you help us? But I think early on in the mentorship, Rich and I sat down with Pace and we asked him, what is your vision for the accountability groups and of an accountability leader? And he said, I would like to see you both help people collaborate, grow, learn, and do deals and build a community. And we took that to heart. And given that's, who we are as individuals, it was a perfect fit. And it's something we do every day, 24/7, 7 days a week. We believe in giving back to our community, whether it's the SoCal community or anyone. I'm talking to 3 people tomorrow, from one in Vermont, one in South Carolina, one in Florida, Subto students who just have questions, and we love helping. And so part of being a good leader is leading by example. And that means not trying to sell people on our services, but helping them, empowering them, helping them grow and reach their full potential. And by doing that, we all grow, we all learn.
I love it. That's so awesome. So, all right, let's get into both of your stories a little bit. So Richard, like talk to me a little bit about how'd you get into real estate investing, and when you were getting into it, what were the fears that you were dealing with, and how'd you overcome them?
Yeah, great question. So as I mentioned earlier, I have a software engineering background. My family, my mom is from Jamaica. She's first generation born in the United States. And, Jamaican parents can be very strict. So, the process was, okay, Rich, you gotta come home by 4 o'clock after school. I can go hang out with my friends. I have to be home by 4 o'clock and start my homework. They would check my homework even through high school. They would check my homework, proofread my homework, and check everything, make sure it's right. They're very, very, very strict. And so I went to college for computer engineering, undergrad at the College of New Jersey, grad school for a master's at Rutgers University. And then I started, working corporate. I worked at big companies like Prudential, ESPN, Disney, Twitter, and those are great companies. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy software engineering. That's my passion. And I was doing freelancing at the time as well, just to make some extra money. And that's funny saying African parents. It's funny to see that. So yeah, so my parents were very strict, and I was working corporate jobs, and I also do some freelancing as well. And while I was freelancing, I'm basically working for a client, like working late night hours for a client, trying to create an app for that person, for that client. I'm working late night, busting my butt to make some extra money. And then at one point, I saw a video on YouTube about real estate and passive income. It was Max Maxwell talking about wholesaling and making money from real estate, passively. And I watched that video. I'm like, wow, you can actually make money passively, not doing anything, just having rental properties or even starting a wholesaling business, And that really intrigued me because I was working a lot of hours every single night to make 10K, 15K. And I'm watching this video saying you can make 15K or more in just a couple of hours just by making phone calls. So I was like, wow, that's insane. And then also make passive income on top of that once you own the property. So my mindset shifted, from active income, working, putting time in to make some money versus, in real estate, making more passive income. So my mindset shifted at that point when I watched that one specific video from Max Maxwell and changed my trajectory. So that was back in 2018. So then since then, I have a very low risk tolerance, right? So I started out by partnering with people who are already doing what I was thinking about doing. So I saw people fixing and flipping. So I went to a fix and flip meetup, and the guys' names are Mitch Roye and Anthony Sandoval, who are still my friends today. We still do deals together. And instead of me learning how to fix and flip and taking that risk by myself, I said, hey, Andy, hey, Anthony, how about I lend you money? Because I make great money in my software engineering career. I'll lend you money and teach me how to fix and flip homes. And so that's exactly what we did. So I lended money on the flips, and they taught me how to fix and flip. And I realized that, hey, that's not what I want to do. You have to manage contractors. You go over budget, all that kind of stuff.
It sucks. Flipping sucks. I'm sorry. Like, I'm just like not a fan of it either. I did one flip and I'm like, this is so much worse than wholesaling. like in general. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. But so real quick, I want to interrupt you and just like also ask, so like, what was keeping you back? There was a fear there that was like, I don't want to go in fully, right? I want to test the waters. What was the fear that you were dealing with, and speak to it? Because I mean, obviously now you're fully into it, right? Yeah. Or do you still have your W-2?
No, not right now. I don't have it. I've been full-time for the past 7 months because I still love what I do. I'm going back to it because software engineering is a very high-paying job. And this is a very interesting conversation. People talk about W-2s and not having W-2s. I think if you're a doctor, engineer, or if you have a high-paying job, maybe not a doctor because you have to go to the office. But if you have a high-paying remote job, I say, why not do both? Why not do real estate and your W-2 as well? So that's what I do. So I do software engineering from home. I'm home every day. So why not do both? Right.
Yeah. But so what was the fears that was holding you back, basically? Because like you're way more into real estate now. You're doing all sorts of cool stuff that we'll get into. But just like tell me now, like what were the fear that was holding you back from like jumping all in? And then how'd you eventually overcome that fear?
Yeah, my fear in the beginning starting out is doing something totally new that I know nothing about, right? Real estate was a whole new industry for me. I knew nothing about real estate. That was my biggest fear. Like, how, if I get a deal sent to me, how do I know it's a good deal? If I buy that deal, can I risk losing all my money? That was the biggest thing for me, like losing all the money that I worked hard for. So that was the biggest thing for me. And also making calls. Like, as you guys know, I'm hearing impaired. I don't have a great, hearing, so I can't talk well on the phone. So I thought that you had to be really good on the phone to do deals, and it turns out that I'm fine on the phone. I could be fine on the phone. I have caption services, I have subtitles when I'm on the phone. And just by practicing and listening to several calls, I got better. So my fear was that I can't do something, right? That was my biggest fear. But reality is that you just have to have the courage. You just have to have the courage and the consistency, right? If you have those two things and the resources, you'll be fine. You'll be great. And everybody in Sub 2 is a great resource, right? So you have the resources. So now it's up to you to have the courage and the discipline to be consistent. That's all you need.
So real quick, how do you get that though? Because some people, I'll be honest, like for me, that I had different fears. Like my greatest fear, I think, was also losing money. That's why I did wholesaling, and I didn't hire somebody for like a year and a half when I should have hired somebody after like 8 or 9 months, I would say, because of how much money I was making with it. But I didn't hire anybody because I was like really afraid of losing that money. I'm like, wow, a 20K deal isn't a 20K deal if I'm spending 10K. Now it's just a 10K. What if I'm spending 20K? Then what happens, right? So that was my fear. But how does one have courage and consistency? How do you develop discipline? How do you develop courage? Because like I want to, if we can, and it's hard to do, right? It's hard to think about it because like a lot of entrepreneurs are just like, Nike it, just do it, right? Like stop being a little B word, right? But I always like asking people just to see if they have like techniques or anything they do to like get over and be courageous and be consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I started being that person in the beginning. I was that person that was a perfectionist. Like you had to learn everything. I would always get analysis paralysis, right? Feel like I had to know everything before I jump into it. But now, so basically before I was trying to learn step 1 through 20 before I even started step 1, right? So now I just jump right in, man. Like you said, Nike, just do it. I learned step 1 and maybe step 2, and I just jumped right in. Just jumped right in. I'm now an action taker. That's the biggest thing that changed for me now. I'm now an action taker. I was just trying to think about every single possible worst case scenario. Oh, what about this? What if this happens? What if that happens? I just jump right in, man. I just do a little bit of research. Step 1, step 2, I jump right in. And then if I fail, I fail. I fail forward. That's a pretty common cliche that people say, fail forward. But I stand by it, man. I stand by it. I just do step 1, step 2. Whatever happens next, happens next. If you lose money, you make it back. Money comes and goes, right? But time doesn't. Yep. Right? You can't get your time back. So what are you going to do? You got to act now.
I love it. Mitch, let's switch to you for a second. So tell me a little bit, tell me about your story. Let's start with just, how'd you get into real estate? Let's just start there. Like, how did real estate start becoming a thing for you?
Great. I've been a full-time investor for just about 20 years now. And before that, I spent about 15 years in corporate America. I was a suit like Richard. I have an undergrad degree, and then I went back and got my MBA in marketing finance. I was a marketing manager for a financial services organization for a while, and then got into management consulting. And those are the men and the women that put on the blue suits, get on an airplane 6 days a week and fly around and work with senior executives to re-engineer big companies, strategy, and all of that kind of stuff. And so I was doing that. And I think it was about 2003, I was at a networking event, and I met a woman, a friend of mine, and I said, "What do you do for a living?" And she said, "I'm a real estate investor." And at that point, I already owned my own home, but I said, "A real estate investor? What's that?" And she said, "Oh, I buy and sell things and I flip them." And I said, "Well, what kind of stuff?" And at that point, she was buying and selling notes. She was into that. And I said, "Is it lucrative?" She said, "Well, yeah, I make like tons of money." She made more on a deal than I'd make in 6 months. And I said, "Can you teach me how to do this?" And so back in 2003, we started buying and selling notes. And then that evolved into connecting with some of my friends, and that led to fixing and flipping, then doing single and multifamily development and ground up construction, buying and selling cash flow properties. And then, like Rich said, 3 years ago, joining the mentorship. And most of what we do today is creative finance type deals.
I love it. So
That's how
then
I got
that's
there.
crazy. I didn't know you've been in real estate that long. That's nuts. So then
I started when I
what?
was 4.
What? Say it again.
I started when I was 4.
Oh, I love it. Amazing. It's a good time. So what's changed about real estate from 2003 to now? Because I'm just so curious. I don't understand. Like, it does not make any sense to me how anyone comped anything before the internet. I like thought about this the other day. I'm like, how is that even possible? What did you do? Did you have a binder of properties like that? Maybe that literally was what it was. Like, I'm just like, what was real estate like back in 2003? I guess there was the internet, but there wasn't like Zillow, was there?
Not that kind of stuff. I mean, I was doing fix and flips back in 2003 through 2010. I really didn't know anything. Realtors would bring me a deal and say, hey, this is a junky house with grass in the front yard. And I said, oh, okay, great. What do you think it's worth? And they said, well, if it's fixed up, it's worth 400 and we can get it to you. It's a bank REO. We can get it for 150. I'm like, okay, that sounds good. I didn't know what I didn't know. But, and Richard touched on that. That's part of the reason, part of the solution to letting go of fear. When we get into our heads too much, all those voices start playing and tell us why we shouldn't do things and all the monsters in the closet versus just jumping into it. So in some respects, not knowing things makes it easier to get into it because you don't have to think about it. You just get into action and do it. And it always works out one way or another.
I love it. So I'm gonna ask the same question that I asked Richard. Like, so when you were starting out, what were the fears that you were dealing with? You sounded like you had also a cushy corporate job. You had like the good paying job. You had learned about it, but like, what fears were you dealing with? Like, and how did you overcome them?
I don't know if you ever really overcome fear, and I don't know if I ever want to, because if I don't have fear, that means I'm probably not taking enough risk or pushing myself into new areas. It's what we do with the fear, and do we let the fear control us, or do we control it? Back then, I was going from one world to a completely different world. The world I lived in was corporate consulting, very structured. You knew if you added 1 + 1, you came up with 2. The outcomes were pretty defined. Whereas getting into real estate, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of risk, a lot of not knowing what's going to happen. And that's pretty scary because now you're putting your own money on the line. And as we find, particularly in creative finance, what we do, and I say this a lot, it's more art than science because there's not one way to do what we do. It's really unlimited. I use this analogy. I say, a piano has what, 88 keys, yet you never run out of music. Same with creative finance. There's a number of defined building blocks. It's how you put them together that creates the artistry and the solution in what we're doing to help the sellers. So for me back then, it was fear of failure, obviously. Like Rich, I think I'm still also a perfectionist. I had a lot of all or nothing thinking and fear of uncertainty. And similar to Rich, you have to, train yourself with new mantras, focus on what you've done right. And a lot of times just say, screw it, I'm just taking the action. And when you look back at the history, I've never died. I've never been, in terrible situations, and everything really works out. And when you look at it, you can look at it and say, you know what? I'm really glad that happened because I wouldn't be here today if X, Y, and Z didn't happen. So I take an attitude of gratitude towards things that are either scary or challenging or may not work out. I don't call them failures. I call them learning opportunities. And I may not see that right now, but I know in 6 months or 12 months, I'm going to say, wow, I couldn't be doing today without having that experience 6 months ago. That's
I love
beautiful.
it. And I'll always say, literally, Scorch the Fears would not exist without Pace. Like, I went to the mastermind and he told us all we have to start a podcast. And then I was like, all right, screw it. We're starting a podcast next week. Like, we're just doing it. Right. So literally none of us would be sitting right here right now in this moment without him. And obviously I've made so much money thanks to Pace, and he's like a leader that's beyond describing, as like all three of us know. Like he's helped like guide the path for like what we're supposed to do. So I absolutely love it. Guys, I appreciate you too. Thank you guys so much for coming on Scorch the Fears. Next week, I'm bringing back Kevin Cho, because last time I had Kevin Cho on, he had barely done that many deals. He'd probably done like 4 deals, and now he's just absolutely crushing it. So I'm like, all right, Kevin deserves to come back on again. Like I want to hear what's been up with him story-wise, and I want to share with the audience. So guys, Kevin Cho is on next week, 5 p.m. PST. It is going to be amazing, 6 p.m. MST. I appreciate all of the people who are on here. Guys, hit up, go to this link. I guarantee you guys are going to get value. And again, Mitch and Richard, thank you so much. Scorch the Fears, episode 79. Let's freaking go.